Hey everybody out there, my name is Dragnix, and this is a flyby of Last Will. Last Will is a puzzle game that has you solving riddles before the place burns down around you, all because your grandfather is sort of a dick. The game comes out on August 23rd, 2016 on Steam and the Humble Bundle store for $13. I played the game for about 3 hours to come to these first conclusions. But before I begin, this key was obtained from a fellow YouTuber, Mellow Online, for the purposes of playing on a stream. I'll link to it if it's happened by now, and if it hasn't, I'll post a link to where you can see it in the description below. Now, why tell you this? Because you should know where I get games from. It won't change my opinion of the game in the end, but disclosure is never a bad thing, despite what Pro Syndicate may think. So here's the deal with Last Will. You play as an unnamed grandchild to an old and eccentric professor, and you're here because, well, he sorta died. You could probably get that from the title, the whole Last Will thing and all, but there you go. Here's the thing, your grandfather wasn't exactly normal, and to be honest, he doesn't really trust you or your other siblings. So you've got to prove that you're worthy of the inheritance by solving a series of puzzles. Okay, that's not too bad, right? Well, you're sort of locked in a reverse escape room situation. Oh, and by the way, there's a time limit. If the time limit is hit, the mansion collapses in a fire around you. Now you may ask why your grandfather turned his inheritance into a game similar to Saw, and I don't have answers for you, because I haven't gotten far enough for him to explain his plan. But more on that specifically later. So this is a game based entirely around solving puzzles, and there's an assortment of them that you'll run into. For example, in the first room, you'll find pieces of paper along the wall, giving you clues on a 4-letter word in a cryptic fashion. It's your job to figure out what the word is and place it into the appropriate location. If you're right, it'll ding, and you'll need to move on. Once you enter all 3 words in the room, you'll open up the next room that you can go into. Now, what if you get stuck? Well, here's the thing. Sometimes rooms have multiple clues. In the first room, for example, I may be able to find another sheet of paper with the same number on it, and will be a different riddle for the same answer. Or I may run across cryptic drawings, highlighting boxes while I'm searching. Using those elements, I can piece together a word using a set of paintings that I find that correspond with those drawings. I admit I like the idea behind this. One of the big problems with puzzle-based games is that wall, when you hit that one puzzle that you just don't see the answer to. Having a way to deal with that is smart. The problem with Last Will, however, is simple. It doesn't use that mechanic that often, so it gets used in this first room, but rarely did multiple riddles or solutions show up in the rooms after it. Now, as to the puzzle's difficulty and or creativity, it's all over the place. Look, I'm going to say it now. I'm a sucker for a good riddle and or more traditional thought-based puzzles. The puzzle where the game gives you a series of clues indicating what position dinner guests are at a table and having to figure out what they drink and what they have with them, it's something that I rarely get tired of, even if we've seen the mechanic repeatedly over and over again in other games before this. And to be fair, Last Will tries to mix things up with the puzzles. It tries to bring chess-like puzzles as well as more traditional word puzzles into the mix. But when those puzzles miss, that's when Last Will really misses the mark. Things like the key puzzle, for example, where I have to turn the wheel and bring the room at a specific rotation to open up the next cabinet to get the next key. The problem here is that it isn't a puzzle. It's not like you need any clues to get through this room. You just try opening the cabinet, and if you don't find the key, turn the wheel once and try again. That trial and error gets highly annoying and makes you wonder why you're even playing the game. Now, the game seemingly has a trick up its sleeve regarding these puzzles: Procedural Generation. For example, you can run across a variety of different rooms in a different order. You may find yourself in a chess room as the second room in your first run, or it may be the lounge. In those rooms, there may be elements that are switched up as well. Items may be in different places, the solution may be different, etc. That would seemingly add to the game's replay value. For the first room, for example, it can end up helping it in the long run with different word riddles. But one of the big problems here has everything to do with the procedural generation. See, it works alright in the cases of the first room, until you realize that sooner or later, you're running across the same riddles. There's not enough variety in its arsenal within these rooms to really make an impact replay-wise. Even when doing the first room for the 4th time, I was seeing some of the same riddles again. This is the game's supposed selling point, the replayability portion along with the multiplayer aspect with your friends. And if it's already running out of tricks at this point, I'm very, very concerned. And then there's the puzzles that really didn't need that procedural element getting that involved. What about this room with the butterfly puzzle, for example? Basically, I have to hit these buttons that will cause the butterflies to open their wings in a specific pattern. Each button cycles between a specific set of win positions, so I've got to find out what the right button combination is to open them all up. Now, part of the procedural generation here is which button opens up which set of wings, which is fine, and it does the job of keeping things fresh. But the other part is the position of the buttons, it seems. And this is where I start to have major problems with the game, because certain positions are just annoying. I asked the developer, why? There's 2 big rooms here, and any button in the second room means that I can't see the effect that the button push had on the butterflies. It's the biggest set of feedback I have for this room, so why make it so difficult for me to see those elements with the position of the other buttons? Maybe the piano's in the way this time, maybe it's not, but I question what it adds other than frustration for a single player. Now, multiplayer-wise, this may work better, considering one person can stand in front of the butterfly and call it out to the rest of the people of what they do when they push the button. But if you're going to mix and match elements from single player and multiplayer here, you're going to have to help yourself in the single player portion and make things a little bit simple. And you don't. And that's when things work, by the way. I understand that the game gave me a warning regarding the state of the beta when I recorded this video, about 2 days before its launch. I understand that there will be bugs, but here's the thing. If I'm fighting your game in terms of its implementation, bad things are going to happen. If I know the solution but literally can't activate the element to make it so, I'm just going to want to shut off your game and never come back to it. There were several occasions where something obviously broke in my gameplay, whether it be me pushing a book against a shelf, or the optional clue menus not resetting on a new room, or the save system. And frankly, when your game is focusing on simple elements at its core, basically the kind of puzzles that you'd find to break up action sections of a new Resident Evil game, you've got to keep people immersed in your world. And with the lack of graphical fidelity, and sometimes just plain ugly texture work here, Last Will lost the immersion rather easily. There were some elements where I laughed at how bad the work here was, like being able to see the cigar texture under the box it was in. There were cracks in the floors that I could see into the emptiness of space. Look, I don't expect the world of a smaller indie game in terms of this kind of presentation. But when you're trying to capture a creepy atmosphere with your dialogue and your music, those kind of things immediately take me out of the world no matter what you do. This world feels half finished. This project feels like it needs a bit more time in the oven before it comes out, because if some of the major problems that I mentioned are fixed, you've got a solid idea at its core. When the game brought a fun puzzle out for me to solve, it was fun, despite the game's engine not necessarily giving me the control that I wanted at times. It feels like a shell, like something was carved up and made, but no real life was put into it. It misses the mark completely when it comes to atmosphere, and that's a big sin in my mind for a game like this. It also doesn't help that the game is launching episodically, with the second act coming out 2 weeks after the launch date, which is a little bit concerning considering one, it doesn't say that anywhere on the store page as of recording this video, and two, why? Look, you want a good puzzle challenge? Go play the Talos Principle. If you want a puzzle element to play with your friends, go play Portal 2 and some of its custom maps. But if you're looking at Last Will to be your fix for right now, I'd suggest looking elsewhere. it just doesn't have the polish at this time to really deliver in the puzzle genre. Thanks for watching. Like the video, share it with a friend, and subscribe if you want more content like this. In the description below, you'll find the Steam review accompanying this vid, along with social media that you can follow me on, Twitter, Google+, and Facebook groups. And if you want to support the channel, click that Patreon on the left of the screen. And remember, keep on gaming.